Rachel and I are both criers. So, so thanks, Rachel. I found this on the way in this morning, so remember it. I'll get back to it. 3 years ago, my house was burglarized. I came home from a really hard weekend of work, and most of what I had of value was gone. $276,000 later, and 6 months, the perpetrator was arrested and put in jail. My mom, dad, and I got in the car. We drove to the courthouse for the arraignment. I wanted to be there. We waited for hours for our case to come up, and when it did, the bailiff stood up and said that the man who'd burglarized my house didn't feel well and didn't feel like coming into the courtroom. He was in jail. I didn't even know you had a choice. Color me surprised. And so the three of us, my mom, dad, and I, walked to the elevator. I pressed the button to go down. It was silence. We walked into the elevator, and my dad said, "Hey, have you heard the story about the drunk guy? He pushed the elevator button, steps into the elevator, and falls directly to the bottom of the shaft. He gets up, dusts himself off, looks up and screams, 'I pressed up, damn it!'" And I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. And I look back on that day, and all I can think about is how funny my dad is and how he knew exactly what I needed. I needed to laugh. And that's a really important thing for creative people to hang on to, your sense of humor. I could live without the things that were stolen, but I couldn't live without that. And he knew that. So, you shouldn't have started me off crying, Rachel. Yeah, this is really uncool. Now to this. These are some of my favorite things, and they're on my coffee table. It's my found cool stuff pile. And every time I look at this in my living room, I'm so pleased with myself. I find something really cool or beautiful, and then I stick it in there. It's on the table today, right next to your donuts. This is a typical day in the life of CHD. That's my little darling. Nobody eats a chip like she does. And speaking of treasures, this stuff right here is sometimes the difference between us being successful and losing our minds. Yeah, and you all have days like that, I'm sure. This is our shop. And notice how well organized it is. This is us trying to find something that's very, very, very important, pivotal in the success of our project. And stolen pampas grass. That's a treasure. It's hideous, though. It looks so lovely in so many spots, but both of us are allergic to it, and we just rail every time we have to transport it. It's awful. Treasure is important in our daily life. It really is. Because you're faced once again with problems and strife, and you're expected to come up with something that's creative and fantastic and new and different. Tricky when you're under pressure. This particular project, do you remember it? This was for you.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
Of course.
Yes, I do. This project was a challenge because it had teal carpet in one room and purple in a stained glass window. Now do you remember it, Anyakina? Yeah. That carpet was the bane of our existence when we started. And it just, we'll start on a project and we have an idea for it. And then we show up and we've got a trailer full of things and we put it in, and sometimes the magic happens and it just falls together and the flow is great. More often than not, that's not the way it happens. It didn't happen here. And it takes a while. And then all of a sudden, it comes to us. We pulled in a huge abstract canvas that had teal in it and a giant crab that had teal and purple. What was the worst, gross room in the house ended up being really what made the house so beautiful in the end, didn't it? Yeah. And if you guys think of some treasure, if something comes to you, save me. Just blurt. Just blurt it out. Okay. On to the creative process. This part is the part that traumatizes you. When you step back and allow yourself to just breathe, walk through a garden, just be joyous for a little while or silly, all of a sudden it kind of frees you up. And that's, once again, where the magic happens, and the magic is your treasure. For some reason, this part, just like, I don't know, it's just like when you have a baby. This part is so gnarly. And yet this little bitty part, when it all comes together, it makes you forget all of this. All of it. Until you have to do it again. Creativity is ignited when you allow yourself the time to appreciate magic in all of its forms. Lunchtime. My daughter and I on the beach in Hansville, tapping into our inner maturity. Rainbows are interesting. They don't come generally after good stuff. They usually come after a storm. And I think that the gift that a creative person has is remaining hopeful. That you'll think of something great. The beauty of that is that you keep your eyes open and watch for those lovely things that pop up. Yeah, so that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, is the beauty you experience when you see it. Second law of physics. Everything in the universe leans towards disorder. Me, in the rain, cold, carrying furniture upside down because it's white. I'm miserable and tired. Hard to be creative when you're miserable, tired, and wet. Anyways, this project ended up being a lot of fun. The coolest thing about this house was a little tiny dilapidated tree house. And we ended up, spur of the moment, deciding to stage the tree house. So we put little lights in it and a tin bucket with a rope that we'd come across. I think it was in an apple tree in another project long ago, so that you could, send it down for cool stuff. And a treasure chest, which I should have brought with me this morning because it was fitting. My daughter drew a map. It was really cool. We had a 1950s little camping set and camping stools. That was emotion. Emotion sells. We nailed it on that one. We were so pleased. Creatives work through change, transformation, so that each thing receives its true nature and destiny. I was in New York City, and when I was walking down the street, and what I saw was this. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. I mean, I saw the whole thing, but my eye went straight to this, which is here. And this church had burned down. But inside was this, and it looked like a church in and of itself, the ashes inside and the stone after being burned. And all I could think about was how beautiful it was, even though it had burned. And it reminded me of a quote by a German composer that said, I think he said that architecture is frozen music. I thought that was really beautiful. Embracing the things we find challenging. This is another job for Alyssa. This was a job that she brought us out on and said, do you think that you can make this thing beautiful? And I was so excited about it. I knew we could. It was darling. We didn't even get to go inside. We just had to peek from the outside because the man that was living in it was very fragile. She was worried, and rightly so. I didn't even cross my mind. Back to that chart about, oh shit. That part didn't hit until after I'd said, yes, it's gonna be great. Oh, of course you can get the price you need to get. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. On a shoestring, we can do it. Right, Alyssa? Yeah. The septic had been down for a long time. They had been using the living room as an area for a potty chair thing, so it was hideous. It smelled so bad. And it was rat infested. It was gnarly. But you know, it was so bad that the housekeeper that we hired quit. And so we put our hair up in Rosie the Riveter bandanas and went in. We can do this. Sophie made magic with the stove. That's a trick she learned from college. She killed it on the stove. It was a shiny new penny when we were done. Anyways, or well, she was done. By the time we were finished with this particular project, it was so darling. We built emotion back into it. We took out all the sadness. Yeah. That's an old sign from a sandwich board sign from the 1940s. And it was perfect in that house. It was Christmas time. And when we left, when we handed the house over to Alyssa, I felt like we were handing over this beautiful new child. Yeah, it was great. Part of the creative process is letting go and allowing yourself to be in the moment. We do a lot of imagining before we ever start on a project. This project was a factory home that was super basic, had very little architectural interest, pretty bland. We imagine families. We imagine who's going to be there, who might buy it, and then we create something around the family or the person that we are designing it for, in hopes of attracting a buyer. This is the copper top to a bird bath that I stuck on an old John Deere stool, and we arranged a little artist area in a room that had perfect light. We thought it would be a really nice place for a starting artist to start their life. It worked. Thinking big. This is important. People hire you to do work for them because they're sure that you're talented and you're the person that can help them. It's not unusual that that same person will micromanage you and make your life Make your life a living hell. We just came off of an extremely hard week. When you have to be gentle with yourself and remind yourself that what you're hearing from these people is their insecurity. And it's easy for people to criticize. It's hard for people to actually do. So you're out there and you're trying to fight your way through and be fresh and loving, and you're worried about making your house payment and all of these other things, and the price of gas, and yet you're supposed to be innovative and fresh. Meanwhile, they're hacking away at you, and it is hard to be that for somebody who is not feeding your soul. So you have to do this for yourself sometimes and think, I'm all right, I can do it, I'll live through this. One of our favorite techniques when we're up against it is just telling ourselves when we hit a wall, a creative block, 5 minutes. I'm going to live through this, you guys. when we hit a creative block, we'll just say to one another, you know what, I don't know what we're going to do, but we'll think about that tomorrow. Straight from Gone with the Wind. Scarlett O'Hara had it right. Think about that hard thing tomorrow. Right now, you just got to make it to the party. You'll come up with something. This job was such a neat project. It was a house that was actually in Sunset magazine in the 1950s. And on the way home from work, I called my mother and asked her if she'd cut up one of the tablecloths that I'd collected over the years. I collect tablecloths from the 40s and 50s. And I thought if Mom made napkins for me for the table, that would really be really sweet. And we used that as the basis of our design for that project. And it was dreamy. And then there's these days. Sometimes we have to use other people's furniture. This was one dang heavy chair, and taking off the cushion was the difference between getting it moved and not getting it moved. And that's what we found inside of it. And I always end up with this job because baby always throws herself back against the wall and says, I can't, you have to do it for me. She taps out every time. And because I'm the mother, I get the dirty work. I get the dirty panties. Okay, treasure in being brave and in doing things differently, in embracing your own vision, talent, and tools. You do your best work when you're vulnerable. When you're right up against it and you're doing something that's edgy and scary. It's scary because you're putting yourself out there and making yourself available, somebody to criticize your art. That takes inner strength beyond words. That inner strength is your treasure. And it's all right to fall flat. It's also all right if somebody doesn't understand the magic that you managed to perform and what all went into that magic. It's okay. It doesn't diminish what you've done. Back to the penny. That's my buddy, that guy. Every single day I find a penny, almost every single day. Pennies are lucky. Keep looking for treasure in your world. A found penny is lucky. A found penny that is gifted is doubly lucky. I have a whole jar of found pennies. And in the back, there's one for each of you. So, on your way out, pick up your penny and keep your eyes peeled for all of the wonder that's in this world.